That's where it all started for me. But integration came in, and I ended up in the white schools in the 8th or 9th grade, and in Cone High. I've been here all my life. But I became a member of the United Youth Workers for Social Justice, and down with the freedom of Angela Davis, war in Vietnam, all that issue, that segment. And as a workers, they charged us to be communists, but we were socialists in the area of unionism. Been rank and file all my life, but I left that area of my life and started working with a group called D.D. Wallace as a paraprofessional. They just sent me out to volunteer state to learn how to be a community mental health worker. And well, I just stayed in the area of dealing with people. In '75, I went in corporate America and worked as a production worker up until '94. I spent 22 years, and I'm retired now. I draw a pension. I'm grateful for that, and I like to fish. But I was a member of the NAACP, and I recommitted myself in 2009, and I'm at large for an officer as a committee member of that. And this is my 3rd term working in that capacity. I'm the housing chair for state and local here in Tennessee for housing.
And so in a real sense, Mr. Zirker, you know quite a bit about some of the issues that we're involved with dealing with housing. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to allow you to start off. Yes. I thought that was my fault.
Yeah.
We're going to allow you to start off in dealing with housing, and then we'll have 8 minutes to deal with that particular segment. And so I didn't know this. I thought we had about 3 minutes, but we've got 25 seconds to go.
Okay.
But when we come back for this second segment, then we'll give you an opportunity to elaborate upon some of your housing experiences, as well as some of the things that we're doing. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. That's
Sir? Say it one more time.
Can you mute your phone?
I did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so this is our second segment. It's 8-minute segment.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 So
what we're going to start, we're going to start with you.
Okay.
And we want to get your housing situation, which is to say we're going to have 8 minutes. And so in 4 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, speak up and give us your housing, to, you know, how you became.
I'm going to give you some experience, strength, and hope with it.
Yeah, you know, for about three or 4 minutes. And then we want you, when he finished, tie into him for the next about 4 minutes of that, and then we'll get out of here with that 8 minutes. Okay, we're going to start with you, Mr. Zirker.
Okay, just let me know when.
Okay. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor KWalker and Mr. John Zirker. And Mr. Zirker, let's start with you by having you to give us some information dealing with some of the issues involved with housing and the growth of Nashville. Let's do it from that perspective. Take about 4 minutes, and then Pastor Walker will end us for this segment.
Well, thank you. It just didn't happen. I just popped up and ended up with the information. I took the long way around. Formerly was homeless, and with my experience in rank and file as an organizer, when I came back on the scene of becoming, I overcame homelessness and live in public housing, one of the largest sites in Nashville, where I'm the president of the Resident Association, which gave me the opportunity to travel and learn about mediation, arbitration, Robert's Rules of Order, and also about the housing issues. I sit on the board of directors in Washington, D.C. for the National Coalition for Low-Income Housing. That gave me more insight on how the system was working. And Also, I sit on the board of directors in D.C. for the National Coalition for the Homeless Coalition. And so I started right there. And as I traveled and working with public housing as the president of the Resident Association, which has been with that for 13 years now, I was able to go back and forth to D.C. with HUD and learn about HUD regulations and some of the things that's happening with HUD. Now that Sean Donovan, which President appointed to Secretary of HUD, well, really what happened was HUD gave Housing Authority the key to the farm, so to speak. They're the property owners now. And that's the first step. Here in Nashville, Housing Authority has the best game in town. They're the developers for the stadium, for the ballparks, and a lot of the condos and things that's going on in Nashville. As this thing continues to build into this gentrification on this front end, they're positioning themselves now to continue to have the best game in town. They don't have to send out for developers to develop Casey, which is the largest site that's about to be torn down in 2017. All this will tie into what I'm saying as I speak. So they're positioning themselves with the 716 units and with that property at James Casey to where at first everybody had to move, but it was fought off through the NAACP with the revitalization team that was hired to come in there. They was there illegally. Going into this gentrification, I'm still headed that way. But this whole thing is a movement. And it's not just happening here in Nashville. It's happening all over the country. The way I see it is in 1970 when integration and black people were moving into these communities, white folks got up out of here. Then their children are coming back with this old money, and they're buying up everything. We're working on a thing now to try to get some clarity and educate ourselves as to really what's going on with this gentrification, because it's not communities anymore, it's neighborhoods, and they have names. And I just did a thing with one of the stations talking about the charter schools, and all these things are prepping for this new neighborhood type of system that's in place. But what is actually happening is sending poor people onto a reservation. It's almost like the Indians, as far as I'm concerned, because there's no new development for poor people. We did have to move there at Casey, but fought it off with the support of NAACP, that they came back with a thing called RAD. And with that RAD, no one has to move, but we moved from Casey to Casey. But that's not the case in a lot of cities with where HUD is giving the property to Housing Authority. Folks is having to move and don't have anywhere to go. And
so, Pastor, what we're saying here is that some of the policies that have been followed dealing with housing has led to the removal of a large number of individuals who might have been in public housing, but now they're no longer in public housing, and so they're in a real sense almost on the street. Talk about it from that perspective.
There's a new homelessness out there that exists now as a result of Nashville's growth. You know, I mean, I appreciate the positive side of the growth of Nashville and everything with all the development. You know, if we can think back, you know, 7, 8 years ago, during the past presidential administration under Bush, you drive around Nashville and you see foreclosure here, foreclosure there. I mean, the housing market was just down, you know, and people losing properties and stuff like that. Now, with all this growth that's taking place under this current administration, and Nashville is truly booming and growing, all the construction and everything, but this housing market that's here now is pushing a lot of people out of housing, because a lot of them are unable to afford housing. You know, even with the Section 8 situations and stuff like that, you got people that had properties that had their property certified for Section 8 occupancies. Now that all this growth is taking place, some of these homeowners are taking money, as Mr. Zirker had alluded to earlier in our conversation before, and taking monies and renovated their properties, what I'm trying to say. And as a result of that, they're getting market value for the properties, and so the people that would have normally rented those properties under Section 8, they're unable to find it. And I work with the homeless, and I experienced people with certificates, Section 8 certificates, but cannot find housing.
For the price of those certificates
Absolutely,
that they have.
yes, absolutely, because so many, the housing market is just so high right now,
Is it good to say, I mean, can we say that most poor individuals in town have been priced out of housing, and therefore they're almost homeless?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
they're been priced out of housing. They're almost homeless, and some of them are homeless. You get calls, man, from where I work at. A woman and her children and stuff looking for somewhere to go. She's got a job, but she can no longer afford to stay in the place that she is in because the landlords are seeing the rise in the market value for rentals, and they're raising these rents up to the level where people cannot pay them. And then you've got people that's coming in from bigger cities and stuff like that that's used to paying high dollar rents, and then the rents they paying here, they're actually saving money. Whereas we're looking at it, man, this is an escalation in the cost of rentals in Nashville, but these people are coming here renting because they're actually saving money, whereas we're seeing it, that the prices, and it's pricing other people out.
Okay, and we're going to have, we got 30 seconds in this particular segment. But when we come back, Mr. Zirker, what we want to do is look at some of the proposed solutions to some of the issues that we have, and we'll have 10 minutes to deal with that. But we're going to start with you, and anything that you have or your knowledge in terms of how we might be able to deal with that, this is when we want that information to come out. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Section 8, which is a set amount of money that the government can pay. If they give you $200 or $300 for an apartment, and you ordinarily could have taken care of that, but now that they go back for what about raising the amount of money? Is there a possibility?
No, it's even worse than that.
Okay,
they're not renting to a Section 8.
Well, you hold it, hold it, because that's what we want. This is the time that we want that out. We're going to have 10 minutes, and when we come back, you got 5 minutes to lay out as loudly and as fast as you possibly can.
Give you some solution stuff too.
That's what I'm talking about.
Sir.
Just speak up.
Oh, I got you. I got you.
5 minutes, and then you grab the next 5 minutes and you speak up, and we're going to try to do this.
I want to talk about the significance, because you said something about fighting against moving out, so they're moving from Casey to Casey.
Yes, sir.
And that's not been the case.
Nowhere.
The other places around.
This is the only place.
Really significant.
It is.
Okay. Well, anything y'all have to say about that?
That was one.
You got 10 minutes.
That was one through fighting off what they had, the revitalization. Everybody had to move. They were going to tear down the whole thing. And where were we going?
Yeah, I know. I see. That's what. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show today. We're talking about the growth of Nashville and how the housing population in Nashville. And Mr. Zirker, let's see if we can talk in terms of some of the solutions, in terms of some of the issues that we've already talked about. How do you see it from your perspective?
Good. Well, this is a booming town. This is an it city. The revision of this city with all the major developments is here. They have a 25-year plan. The East Bank in itself, they're talking about 12,000 units. This is a whole lot of major development. There's no, if you look at the builders, the contractors, the construction workers, you don't see certain folk out there that are carpenters, plumbers, roofers, bricklayers, all the things that it takes to build a house. You go around this town and you'll see that there's discriminatory faces. When I was coming up, they had high schools where it was, you came to school mandatory, but you could go to shop. You could learn how to be a plumber, learn how to do these other things. One of the solutions is to get back into some of that. They've got a thing where maybe you go to Job Corps through Martha O'Brien. I think that's one solution of it, but it needs to be a bigger thing. OIC you mentioned earlier, I was a product of OIC. I became a welder and a first-class welder overall, but that's a solution. One of the other problems when it comes to new development, and there's no new development for poor folk. If you look around this city, with all these crane, I'll call it Crane City, with all the cranes that are going up for hotels and for all this new development, but there's no revenue, or should we say crumbs from the master's table that could trickle down in 2% or 3% that would help support new development for poor folk. This real estate here in the city is booming, and so the greed is preventing our new mayor, who was commissioner over the homeless for a spell before she became our mayor. I've shared with her my concerns, but they would spend so many $1 million on a sidewalk because of a child who mother put a little posting on it saying we need better sidewalks. They jumped right on that. When they talk about better schools, and even a superintendent, they're willing to pay from $160,000 to $380,000 for a new superintendent. All these things are part of that rezoning and all things, but the solution still has to be for the least of these, because that's the Christian way, and in God we trust. And so the poor, yes, will be with us always, but we need to look at the poor and bring them along with us. The Section 8 is the slumlords. They're borrowing money and fixing up their places. Yeah, I think it was a place called Howard Garden. They advertised everybody's lease was not being renewed. That's going on all over the city too, because they're redoing their properties so where they can get that market value rent. And then you have like the Barnes funds, where they're inviting folks into the city, which is 55,000 area median income. You're talking about gentrification, the haves and the have less, not the have-nots. And so the solution to some of these problems are to be inclusive. You know, they call it integration now, you know, because of the folks who's moving back into town. But it's still a gentrification.
It leaves a large number of individuals who are not as wealthy or
fortunate,
as financially able,
yes,
and even Section 8, which at one time was able to sort of provide funds for individuals to rent out
support that.
these,
yes, sir.
But now
they're not renting to them.
And I would imagine has the money in Section 8 gone up any in terms of
the money is available, but and they're giving out vouchers left and right, but people are saying, I mean, you know, they come to me all the time. Where can I? Do you know where I can find a place to live? I'm saying, I'm sorry, that's a
nobody
problem.
Can afford, none of the owners.
Well, they're not renting to Section 8 folks.
Section 8 folks.
They're renting to these folks, and they're being compensated 20% by the Barnes funds with the have less. You know, but what about the have-nots, the $9,000, $18,000 a year incomes? They can't afford this type of rent, you know, and they're being forced out too, by the way.
Pastor Walker, speak to that.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about the poor, and people need to understand, we're not talking about people just broke, don't have any money, you know, and we talk about affordable housing, you know, housing that people can afford. You know, you got a lot of people that are living right at the poverty line level or just above it or slightly below it, and people that are working jobs, Dr. Haney, and still cannot afford, you know, the high cost of rentals that's going, you know, as consistently and continuously begins to escalate, and people just can't afford it, so they're being pushed out. And then at the same time, you know, wages are not increasing, affordable housing developments are not going up, but every time you look around, there are more and more and more of the high dollar rentals. And what's going to happen when you get to a point where you got all this property out here, all these rental places out here, and you can't rent them because the people here are not making the kinds of monies that's needed to rent these places. And then like I said, you're pushing a lot of people out into the streets, and they're becoming homeless, and they're working homeless. They got jobs. They're not drug addicted. They're not having some of the typical issues that people have when they're homeless. They're just people that can no longer afford to live where they're living. Even, you know, when you don't even consider Section 8, if you just take Section 8 off the table, you got somebody that's working and been paying their rentals and stuff like that, and not on Section 8 because they had a job, is paying enough money to be able to afford the places where they've been renting in the neighborhoods where they've been accustomed to living in. Now, with the changes in these neighborhoods and the high cost of rents in these neighborhoods, and you got so many people who are buying houses now, as opposed to people buying them and flipping them in terms of selling them, people are buying them, renovating them, and turn them into rental properties because the high cost of rentals around here. So people are able to make money. Of course, you know, you pay for your property that you bought, you know, through the rentals and stuff like that. So it's a win-win situation for everybody except those that's not making the money. Yeah,
who depend on being able to live in those houses.
Absolutely. And something else he said that was significant, and that was with Casey, moving out of Casey into Casey, because when they tore down John Henry Hale and the other projects in East Nashville and Preston Taylor and stuff like that, people had to move out. And then the criteria to get back in, so many of them couldn't move back in and had been living there for years. So then they create these neighborhoods way out, Antioch, Cane Ridge area, all the way down in there. You go around these streets, no street lights, and they put them in these little isolated communities out there, away from everything. If you don't have transportation, you don't get out of there because there are no bus, no bus services out there. So, you know, it's almost like the reservation type thing that you mentioned earlier, you know, and it's a sad situation, and something, you know, something needs to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can envision at some point you're going to be dealing with some ghost town type of situation, because you're going to build all these structures and stuff, and you're not going to have the people that's making the kind of money that these things call for. Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, something's got to give on that.
You're overpriced and have the houses so priced that the individuals who need housing can't afford to buy them or to rent them or whatever, and et cetera. And so, okay, and finally, Mr. Zirker, we've got about a minute. So final comments in reference to this.
Well, as a final comment,